Today we are starting a new chapter, and the first 4 sections of this chapter are going to be on what are called identities. And we actually know quite a few identities, and we'll write them down here in a minute. But is what our goal with these identities is going to be, will be to maybe rewrite something so that it's more simple to work with. Okay. Or maybe rewrite something so that we can actually work with it. Sometimes we have to rewrite things a little bit so we can solve equations. And sometimes it's just nice to know that two things are equivalent. And these identities are going to help us do these things. All right, let's start off. Actually, in 5.1 here, we're not going to end up with any new identities. These are all things we already know. Reciprocal identities. So we know that secant of theta is equal to 1 over cosine theta. And equivalently, we know cosine of theta is equal to 1 over secant of theta. And then we have cosecant of theta is equal to 1 over sine of theta. And we also have sine of theta is equal to 1 over cosecant of theta. And then just two more of these. We have tangent of theta is equal to 1 over cotangent theta. Okay, now all these things that we're about to write down, why are they called identities? So you might remember this from when we learned about our Pythagorean identities. Okay, these are all called identities because these equations that we're looking at are going to be true for all theta. Okay. Normally, if you have an equation, and give you an example, just something easy here. You're used to, you solve for x, so 3 minus 7, we get minus 4. Divide by 2, and so we get x equals minus 2. So this equation was only true for actually a single value of x. The thing that's interesting about identities is they are true for every value that the variable can take. Let's look at the quotient identities. So they're just two of these. We have tangent of theta is equal to the quotient sine of theta over cosine theta. And cotangent of theta is equal to cosine of theta over sine of theta. And then our Pythagorean identities, we have sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta is equal to 1. We have tangent squared theta plus 1 is equal to secant squared theta. And we have 1 plus cotangent squared theta is equal to secant cosecant squared theta. There we go. All right, and then the last set of identities that we'll use in this section are the even and odd identities. So if you remember, the only two even trig functions we have are cosine and secant. So what that means is for both secant and cosine, if you plug in minus x, that's equivalent to just plugging in x. All right, and the other 4 are all odd. So we had sine of, say, minus x. Well, this is going to be equivalent to minus sine of x. All right, and then we have next cosecant. And then from here we have tangent and cotangent. All right, so that might have seemed like a long list of identities, but again, I want to remind you, these were all ones that we already knew. Now, again, our goal is going to really be to rewrite things using these identities. Okay. And this will be an extremely helpful skill in your future physics and math courses.